Hey everyone, welcome back to Rocky Unscripted, where we talk about faith when Sunday is over, and I'm joined with two of my best friends in the entire whole wide world, Matt Cody, Mitch Comstead. How's it going, guys?
Good, man. You just couldn't keep me away. You had to invite me back.
Yeah, we had one episode without you,
and you're like, what am I doing with my life?
Exactly. I questioned a lot of things. And I wanted to make sure that you came back. So, guys, thanks for hopping on to the show today. Already, we've been experiencing some technical difficulties. I am confident that we're gonna make it through. It's gonna look great. It's gonna sound great. So, Matt, thanks for pushing through. I know you're having to deal with a lot of adversity in your office right now.
Yeah, it sounds like this is my fault, and I wish I could do better for you.
Well, Mitch and I over here. There seems to be no problem.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we are talking about something, a brand new teaching series at our church, and it's a series where we're going to walk through our most important values of our church. And I think as church people that work at the church. This is so important because we're talking about, hey, what is most important? What's our mission? What's our vision? And how do we want people to partner with that? Really important to us. I think, however, most people, when they know we're in a value series, and not just us, like any church, their eyes glaze over. And they're like, we don't really care. That is certainly not everybody. But it can be, especially for people that have been around for a long time. Because they're like, hey, I'm in. I don't need you guys to sell me on, being involved in the church. And I think that's a really, really important part of this conversation, because value series can sound like sales. Like, hey, we're trying to get you bought in here, and we're going to kind of spin this into something that you actually want to do, right? It's this like kind of bait and switch. And what I wanted to do in this conversation is take a half hour or so and each episode go through one of our values, but just get really, really brass tacks. Like, we're not going to try to spin it. We're not going to say, oh, no, this is our value, but you actually want this too, right? So you should join with us. I want us to break these down and say, okay, these are the things that we feel like these values can actually benefit you and benefit our community, but this is what these values actually demand of you. Like, this is what we're asking from you, and just be really, really out front with that. So, guys, thanks for being up for jumping into the show and giving us some insight. So, Matt, you're teaching this week, and tell us about the value, one of our values at Rocky. What is that value?
Yeah, we're talking about our value of go together. It's primarily a community value that is. The formation of that is through groups here at Rocky, and so it's kind of two-part community in the sense of just doing life with other people, but then also as a church. It's a missional kind of formation as well, that how we gather together does communicate something to the world. How we interact with one another as a community does say something, and so but yeah, really it's the kind of what you were saying, what we would love for people to do is to value community, and we exercise that out through being part of a group here at Rocky.
Mm-hmm. I think some people hear that and they go, okay, you value community, even that word community. Some people are like, yes, I need that. This is great. Tell me more, because I need more people in my life. There's other people that are like shuddering because they're like, ugh. Like, they've been involved in some form of small group in the past where it was like, that was not fun. That was not good. Or, that term is just thrown around so much. Maybe they've been burned. But Mitch, you are in charge of our discipleship here at Rocky. And one element of that is our small groups. So you're going to be able to speak to those people, both sides, to people that are interested, that are like, yeah, let's go, I'm all in. You can help provide that access to building community, But also, I really want you to be able to speak to those people that are like, I'm uninterested in this conversation. And we'll dig into that. But what's a quick soundbite? What you would tell people that are saying, I don't know if I'm interested in this community thing.
So before I answer that question, I actually want to speak to the idea of a value series. When I think of this concept of values, I'm really thinking of like, this isn't just something that we cooked up on our, the leadership team and like, hey, we want all these people to do this. I really think this is like, no matter what church you go to, I think these are actually important for you in your Christian walk, regardless of whether you're at Rocky or not.
Yeah.
These things they go with you no matter, what church you're a part of. And so this value and this idea of going together, I would say first and foremost, for people who are like, I don't know if I need more people in my life, I would say who is in your life? Mm-hmm. Who is in your life that actually does know you, that actually you've given access to actually speak into your life? Who are the people that are going to encourage you, who are going to be there for you at 3 a.m. when you need somebody? Who is the person who's going to call you out on your stuff? And who are the 3 people in your life that you're like, I've given them access.
Yeah.
And they are also followers of Jesus. And so whether you're a part of a formal group or not, my question would be, who are those people in your life? And we recognize at Rocky and in this world, there's a lot of loneliness and a lot of people who don't have that level of meaningful relationship and community in their life. And so we're trying to provide an avenue for that.
Yeah. Could you speak in? We were in a meeting yesterday where Matt, you were talking to us about this is where I'm going with the sermon this week, and we were just having a kind of a casual conversation afterwards. And Mitch, you had some stats on loneliness in our society, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot. But are there any of those that you can share? Because it was pretty sobering.
They're all bad. They're all bad.
It's
not like, hey, research shows we're all doing really well.
Yeah. So over 50% of Americans say that they feel a deep sense of loneliness on a regular basis. And that particular stat was from 30 years ago. So I don't think we've gotten less lonely over the last 30 years.
That's in the 90s, right?
Yeah. And then this is a recent stat. Denver was actually ranked as the 3rd loneliest city. People without that meaningful relationship and meaningful connection in the United States. And
third loneliest
city.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so, even just taking that, I think Denver is, people are moving here in droves. And so I think there's just this, people are moving here and then don't have their support system and then are looking for that. Mm. And so in an absence of that, they, there's this sense of loneliness and dread and all this stuff. And it's why there's apps out there, not only for, Match.com of finding a partner or a spouse, but it's, also there's stuff out there for finding friends now as well.
On those apps?
On those apps, yeah. And so, I think that's in an effort to bridge this community and loneliness gap.
Okay. Well, that's telling right there. It makes sense if we're all busy and, some of these buzzwords, we're lonely and, you're thinking if you're single, you're thinking, where am I going to meet people? How am I going to meet quality people? And there's all these apps, dating apps out there. It does make sense, but it's I wasn't expecting that, but it makes sense that those apps could also say, okay, what are your interests? What kind of personality are you and connect you with those people. But I can't help but say, it feels like it's a bummer that we need that, and that there's that big of a gap, you know? Mm-hmm. You already kind of spoke to this, Mitch, but I'm curious what you would say, Matt. I don't know how many of us right now listening would say, "Oh, I'm lonely," for sure. Like it's right on the forefront of their mind. I think certainly some of us we've come to that realization. I think there's a lot of people though that'd be like, "I don't think I feel lonely." What are there any kind of signs or symptoms or things to look out for and be like, "Hey, you might be lonelier, or you might be more isolated than you think"?
Yeah, I wonder if the doorway to kind of enter into the conversation of loneliness isn't necessarily a sense of, you know, how many people, you know, I know, like I know their names, or I've got friends on social media because we talk all the time. We're the most connected generation ever, right? I've got a couple of, you know, girls in high school. You've got one in high school, and yet this generation is saying they're very lonely. I think it's more the idea of loneliness in my mind has more to do with just being known. To what level are you being known? Kind of what Mitch was saying, that you could have all these relationships with people and still be lonely. You know, and then you go, well, how's that possible? Yeah. Well, because the level of relationship is still so surfacey. You're not really known. There's a version of you, a perception that you're giving off to the world, and you're kind of keeping everybody at that level. But you're lonely at the core. You know who you are. Mm-hmm. And we live in a generation, in a culture right now that is very protective of that. And so to what level, how many people, you know, could you say something like this, like, I have no secrets with you, and it's well with my soul? When somebody knows you at the core, I think that's what we're really dealing with. And there's levels of that, right? I mean, there's not a lot of people who maybe know me at the core level, but to what Mitch was saying there, but there is somebody. And I think that is, you see this fly flying around?
I was going to say, this fly is like, are you lonely?
Yeah,
are you
this
lonely?
fly right now. It was like buzzing in the mic here a couple minutes ago. I don't know if you heard of it.
Keeps touching your face.
Yeah, so I think it's not like the number of relationships you have, but maybe the level of intimacy and the sense of vulnerability. How well am I known, and how well do I know other people? I think that's really tied to this idea of feeling lonely, because you could have 500 contacts in your phone and live in the world today and still say, I'm lonely. And I think it's just a being known value. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, even as a part of our Go Together verbiage, that's why we say we value relationships and believe God calls us to be known. I mean, and that's really what Matt was saying, is like, we are called. We're called not just to have, 1,000 friends on social media, but we're called to actually be known by people. And I honestly don't believe, though, that God calls us, and that we were even designed to be known deeply by everybody. And I think that's sometimes what, we try to have this version of what we think of being known with our highlight reels on social media. But it's not, but really that's not the being known that I think God calls us to. And we're not called to be known by everybody, but you need to be known by somebody. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we want to try to do. And that's why it's one of our values. And it's why I believe that regardless of what church you go to, this is something that God calls us to. And so we see that throughout Scripture. And so we want to make sure that we are presenting that in such a way that people want to get in on that and know, like, man, this is important for me. Andy Stanley has this quote that says, you can't grow spiritually unless you're connected relationally. And we need to, if we want to actually grow, if we want to actually be known, we need to connect with people in a meaningful way.
Okay, so if you break that down, what Andy Stanley is saying is, it's not just about reading the Bible more, praying more, and trying to develop your knowledge base and wisdom, blah blah blah, if you don't have community.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not going to work. It's going to be both of those kind of in tandem, and those relationships, those spiritual relationships, are going to get you further than just a whole bunch of study by yourself. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, I think that's the proverb of iron sharpens iron, right? That's the whole idea, is that it is, without, if you just have one iron, you're not it's not sharp, right? It takes somebody else, and that's the speaking in. And we can think that we're really great, but with somebody else, it's that feedback that we get from others. That is when we begin to see, oh man, I actually have some room to grow. I have a space where I need to shore this up in my life.
I know both of you are avid runners, so you will. I've talked about this before. You both know this, but there's truth to this idea, even just outside of, the spiritual, but even the physical, where there's been so many studies done that for runners, when you run with somebody, you can run farther and you can run faster. There's just something about knowing you got somebody beside you, and it's why so many people, when they run races, they'll have somebody pace them. Because when somebody else is taking almost like the burden of how fast you should be running, and all you have to think about is, I just got to keep up with them. That's what I do. And their job is the one who's keeping pace. You'll go farther and you'll go faster. And so it's just very interesting, like even in the running world, or, just team sports, you talk about team morale. There's something really healthy when there's somebody else who's with you, and spiritually speaking, it makes sense. Like in the context of going deeper in your faith, when you've got some people beside you, you're going to go farther, than you would probably by yourself, because, you can fool yourself in isolation. You can kind of talk yourself into anything. But when you got someone beside you who's challenging some of that, it's so healthy.
It's interesting. Mitch, you mentioned, iron sharpens iron, that from Proverbs. And if you've ever seen that happen, it's like I'm picturing a blacksmith, building a sword or a knife. Sparks are flying, like it's red hot. It's intense. It seems dangerous. And I can't help but think, when it comes to developing community, building community, and working on those lasting friendships, deeper friendships, tension needs to happen. So I imagine someone listening right now, and maybe there's a relationship that's like, oh, maybe this friendship is about to be over because things got funky. There's tension. They confronted me or I need to confront them. That might be the prime time to stay with it and lean in, because it could be that moment where you're sharpening one another. And that's when your relationship's going to go to a new level. I see that my wife is really good at developing these long-term friendships. She's better than I am. And what I've seen over the years is there are always these moments in like every friendship that's like, ooh, they said something that kind of hurt my feelings or offended me, or they're doing something right now, saying something that I don't think it's best for them. And then she'll lean into those conversations, have tough conversations, and they come out on the other side and they're closer. It's like, and now they have some history that's like, we worked through that and we're better for it. And I think we romanticize it. And, we watch the TV show Friends, and we're like, man, I wish I had friends like that. Or, it's like, it's always the hero and the sidekick that they've been together forever. And we want those tight-knitted relationships, but it comes with a lot of heat. It comes with a lot of tension, sparks. Anything else you guys would add to that? I mean, what I just said, I thought was pretty awesome. But
I'm just going, that's real life. I mean, we're all married. Any relationship to the level of vulnerability will determine the level of intimacy. So it's true in marriage. It's going to be true in every relationship in your life. There's just no way you're going to do life with somebody and not have tension points. And the decision you make, and again, you're not doing this with hundreds of people. But with the core people of your life, you're going to have to make a decision to have those, some people would say crucial conversations, or just tension. There's tension here. But to know when you get on the other side of that, that relationship is going to be stronger. And you're going to need that. There's going to be moments in life that you will need somebody who you are in relationship with at that level, because life is hard. And if you just have kind of easy relationships, surfacey level relationships, then I would argue you're going to be at a disadvantage for when life's going to smack you the hardest. And as a pastor, that's, you go back to the beginning of how you kind of set up this conversation, like, our values, and we're asking people to do things. This community value for me, I have seen so many people who choose not to build community in their life. And then life smacks them really hard, and they've got nobody. And I puff up a little bit because a lot of times those people blame everybody else. Yeah. And they blame the church. There's also a part of me that gets really sad where I'm going, that's not how it should be. That's not how the church is designed to be. But I can't make people pursue community. But the reason why I encourage people is because I know our former lead pastor here, Alan Algram, when he talks about this idea, he says, man, everybody is in 3 different places in their life. They're either about to go into a difficult season, they're in the midst of a difficult season, or they're coming out of a difficult season. And so you're going to need community in all 3 of those seasons. And the beauty of it is that not only do you need something, but you have something that somebody else needs. And when you're not in that season, but you're running with somebody who is, this is the church. We carry each other's burdens, and we come alongside, and we help out, and we encourage, and we tell people things that they know to be true, but they're just having a difficult time, believing it. And that's the beauty of the church. And when you decide not to engage in that, I've just been around too long to know there's a season coming that you're not going to be prepared for, because you are not designed to take that on all by yourself. And if that's the road you take, I'm sad, that discourages me. And so, it's just, you'll need it. You'll need it. Yeah.
Well said. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just kind of go through and say, hey, here are the things based on this value that we want for people. This is what will happen that is a benefit. This is why we have this value. So either you can say something and then elaborate, or it could just bullet point it. But what are some of the things that we do want for people?
I mean, we want to provide a clear and simple pathway at Rocky specifically to help people go together and then to grow spiritually, and to give them a place where they can develop meaningful relationships. But it's not just a time to come and sit and soak and just take in all this information, but it's actually to mobilize and to go out and do other things, which is why we encourage, and we have all of our groups at least twice a year do some kind of serve experience and prayer experience, and we encourage them to get involved, volunteering in the church. It's not just this one time, we're going through this study. It's a group experience of like, what does it look like to actually be the church in a little sliver of the church, and how do we live that out together? And so what I'm hoping for people in this is that they will go together and find that authentic community, and that they will grow spiritually. They will deepen their relationship with Jesus. One of the things we've done with the group's pathway, there are 4 10-week studies that people do, and each one of those aligns with a part of our mission statement. Rooted, the first thing, it really is our know Jesus and love like him. And what does that look like? What does that mean for me? How do I get to know Jesus? How do I love like him practically? What does this look like? And so Rooted does a great job of lining that out. And then, Good and Beautiful God is the second step. That really dives deep into how do I really get to know Jesus and know the God that Jesus knew. And we want that for you. We want to help correct, different narratives, false stories, false thoughts that we have, ideas about who God is, and really go to Jesus and say, hey, what does Jesus actually think about who God is? Do I need to earn my salvation? Can God actually love me in all my baggage and all the stuff? And then actually, discover some practical spiritual disciplines and practices that they can use on a regular basis to actually deepen their walk with Jesus. And then going into, step 3, is irresistible. And this is like, hey, what does it actually practically look like to live out the question, what does love require of me? In my marriage, what does love require of me? In my parenting, what does love require of me? In my community, what is love? What is the love that Jesus has shown me? What does that actually require of me? How do I be for the one? How do I be for other people? And what does that look like to actually truly love them? And then the step 4 is kazon. And really, this is putting all of that stuff together. And kazon just simply means vision. This like vision or this purpose that you have, and putting all of like knowing Jesus and loving like him, and what is he actually calling me to do in my particular situation. And so working through that with a group to then living that out together, in a small snapshot, like that is what I hope that you discover what God is really calling you to do, and that you are able to have a team of people that you can encourage each other to live that out on a daily basis. So anyway, that's like the brief overview of what I hope that you discover in this.
Mitch, it kind of sounds like you're passionate about that.
I am. This is the thing that I, eat and breathe and sleep besides the Enneagram. And so
we're not talking about that today.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. He had to get it in.
We did 10 episodes. We did 10 episodes.
So good.
Yeah. No, that's huge. And one of the things that I remember is, getting in one of those, first of all, it's 10 weeks. That's the commitment. It's that, people are like, because I've been in small groups in the past where it's like we went to a small group launch. This is at a previous church, and you get with a group, and then you're in that group for the next like 3 or 4 years.
They don't even tell you. You're like, am I signing up for life?
Yeah.
And, like,
and these were great groups. But it can be when you step out of that group and you are considering getting into another one. Sometimes people are like, nope, I just don't have time for that. I don't have that commitment. And what you're saying is we're going to commit at least for the next 10 weeks in this group. And the other thing I love is I wouldn't think I'd like it, but I did. And that was the diversity within the group. And I think normally I would assemble a small group that's like, these are all guys, they've got kids, they like these kinds of things, and this is going to be great, right? Like I'm going to grow so much spiritually, and they have so much to offer me and all that stuff. I got into a group, and it was some people were single, some people were married, some people had a church background, some people were barely Christians at all. So all different perspectives. And then some people were in their 70s, and some people, I think they were like 20. So huge range. And it was such a benefit because, I have friends in my life that are like me. We have a lot of the same interests. And this group provided broader perspectives. And
to me, it's also a clear picture of what the church actually is.
Yeah.
It is people at all different ages, stages of life, but then also spiritual experience and background and their own journey of faith and like where they're at. To me, that is the beauty of the church. And we're not all the same. We can learn a lot from, people who are like us. I feel like that's almost more of a support. We're supporting each other through a stage of life. Whereas when it's diverse, it's like we can really sharpen each other and learn from one another what each other has to offer.
Yeah.
And yeah, so, speaking real quick to that, the 10-week deal, we talk about those as more of like on-ramps and off-ramps. We want to create 3 on-ramps per year where people can find and get into that community. And then there's off-ramps. If the group, for whatever reason, sucks or is not your cup of tea, or, and you're like, I just don't know that I can, or circumstances change and you're like, now I have to do all this other stuff on this evening and, take kids here or there, whatever. And the rest of the group isn't going to switch. There's a clear off ramp, but having that micro commitment of the 10 weeks where we're going, deep with each other, and we're going to share life together very intentionally over the next 10 weeks. Mm-hmm. If nothing else, then you begin to see those people on a Sunday morning and you're like, hey, at least I know 10, 12 other people that can come over and say hi and we can chat a little bit more. And it takes it from here. This is the place where I go to this event to I'm going to visit my friends. And that's another big piece that I want, that we want to see happen through groups and honestly through serving together, this can happen as well. But you want to have those people where you are connecting and you are known by other people. I think that's why it's important to have those on ramps, off ramps for people.
Right. Before we get to what do we want from people, Matt, you want to add anything?
I think Mitch and his team's done a great job just creating that pathway, and even all the content that you go through and all those those on ramps of those different 10-week group environments is some of the best stuff. And at the end of the day, we're a church. What we want for people? We want to see them either bump into Jesus for the first time or to continue to go deeper in their faith. And we just know the formation of community is one of the best places, if not the best place for that to happen. So it's why Jesus talks about it. It's modeled in the New Testament, and all the studies say, man, you're better to have community in your life, and so that's why we're for it.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Okay, so let's be transparent. Our values determine our behaviors. So our values do ultimately say this is what is expected from you. So what are we asking from people?
If you do not have a community of believers who know you, we want to invite you into joining a group. And we do that. I mentioned we have 3 on ramps a year. And so we're getting ready to come up to one. So depending on when you're listening to this, you can go to Rocky.Church/groups right now and click join a group and look at the groups that are available. And then we have a launch coming up on September 17th, and it's going to be super fun. And you'll get to know your group there and get your material. And we're going to be having
get to meet
barbecue.
Mitch.
You're going to get to meet me. You're going to get to eat some barbecue. Some guys are smoking meat. It's going to be good.
Yeah. So it does require that commitment, at least 10 weeks at a time. I'm curious, how common is it for people to do the 10-week rooted class? Or rooted group. That's the first one. Mm-hmm. How often do people continue on?
So the group, it's about 90% of our groups will continue on to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
Now individuals, there's usually, 2-ish people that drop, 2 to 4 people that drop out from 1 to 2, in the group, but that doesn't always happen. And again, I think it's usually life circumstance more than anything else, and what's going on. And so, but the majority of our groups will continue on to the next step. And I would say more and more of our groups, I mean, I'd probably say it's 70% or 80% of our groups will then go on and finish all 4 steps.
That's incredible.
Which is pretty remarkable.
Awesome.
I think what that tells you is those people say this is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And you know, a part of what we do in groups at Rocky as well is not only have a launch where we bring all of our pathway groups together for a big, you know, to recognize that we're a part of something bigger. And it's not just about me. It's not just about my group. It's like, hey, there's all these other groups going through similar things. And then we're just a small sliver of the church, of the whole church. And so, but then 10 weeks after that, we bring everybody back together at a celebration and we celebrate what God has done over the last 10 weeks. And we just, you know, praise him and celebrate. And it's a really good time.
Matt, remind me, you mentioned something that I think you said Tom Moyers was talking about as far as like the Rocky being, it's a large church. And what did he say when it came to small groups?
Yeah, Tom, he's the older guy on our team. I always joke with him because when you get old, you can say whatever you want. You know what I mean? When you're old,
it's true.
And this was several years ago, but we were at lunch with somebody who was being pretty critical of our church. And Tom, I was just kind of listening, and Tom just kind of stopped this guy, and he said, "Where are you serving right now?" You know, kind of being pretty firm with him. And the guy was like, "Well, I don't serve right now," and he had a bunch of excuses why. And then Tom said, "What group are you in?" And the guy wasn't in a group, had a bunch of excuses. And Tom just said to this gentleman, "Our church is too big for you not to be in a group." And I've just never forgot it. I've just never forgot that moment. And I just said, he's right. We're the odds of, you know, we're pro community. We're trying to foster community. And because of the size of our church and just the culture we live in, the odds of you developing deep friendships only from potentially attending a service every once in a while on Sunday morning is about nil. And group is our formation. That's our pathway for community here. And yeah, I've just never forgot it. I tell that story all the time. Our church is just too big for you not to be in a group. And if you know, and I tell people in a very kind way, if you do not want to get in a group, then you need to go find a church that is much, much smaller, where the odds of you seeing the same people every week will be much higher. And that's just, I thought that was good wisdom from a guy who's been in ministry for over 40 years. We're just too big. We're just too big. You can't show up here, and if you refuse to get in a group, it will hurt your depth of community, and if that is tied to our spirituality, it'll hurt in the context of your relationship with God. So, and when he said it, just got like super quiet at the table. It was so uncomfortable, and so I just always remember that lunch.
Well, it's a good admission because I think sometimes when people are involved in a larger church, it just automatically becomes this negative, like it's the church's fault that it got too big, and we should do something to make the church smaller, you know, less attractive to people, so less people want to come. But this is a way that we make the church smaller. Is by breaking up into these smaller groups, and you saw it in the early church. They were meeting in homes. And I think it's because that's where you could gather, but also you could serve one another. And even almost immediately, the first church in Jerusalem grew to like 3,000 people, you know, in like one of their first meetings because so many people came to Christ, and then they had to break up into smaller groups. I think another thing that we would say that we want from people is this would scare a lot of people. And they'd feel unequipped, or they're not worthy, whatever. But it's a calling from Jesus, and that is people will end up having the opportunity to pastor one another. And I don't mean having all the right answers, of having your theology all buttoned up. I mean there are going to be people in your group that need someone to listen, and you're going to have the opportunity to listen to them. There's going to be situations that pop up they need care right now. They need someone to show up at their house and drop off a meal. They need someone to go visit in the hospital. And the opportunity is there for people to serve like Jesus. and to pastor one another. And I think that is an expectation that comes with that value, saying we are going to go together, and that's what that looks like sometimes, is bearing one another's burdens. Mm-hmm. So people that might be weirded out by that and say, I am not the person to be any kind of a pastor. I'm not worthy of that. I don't know enough. What would you say?
I mean, first of all, I mean, piggybacking on that, if you are a person who ends up on that side of like, I need somebody to listen. I just had, a death in the family. I just going through whatever this stuff is. Just got a diagnosis that, and it's not good. The truth is, we as the pastoral staff on Rocky can't literally know everything that's going on here at Rocky. And we can't, even if we did know everything, we can't get to every single situation that's out there. Mm-hmm. And so we rely on our group system. This is again, I would say, a part of what Jesus is calling us to is to be there for one another as we go together. And so you will, I mean, like Matt was saying, you're either going into a difficult time, you're in a difficult time, or coming out of a difficult time, right? That is in your group. Those are the people, and this is the structure that we have to, because we are a larger church, to try to make sure that happens and that is taken care of for you and in your group. So, that is another just really key piece of it. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
yeah, you answered my question.
When I talk about groups, I do talk about this idea of care, and I tell people the stories of, when we hear about something, a tragedy or difficulty, maybe someone's going through in our church, and we make that call. That call goes two different ways, usually depending on if they're in a group or not. And if they're not in a group, a lot of times you can feel the tension in the call that we didn't call soon enough. And this person just doesn't have a lot of community in their life. And then you call somebody who is in a group, and usually, when we're going, hey, what can we do to help? What do you need? I don't cry much, but there's been a few times, when you're talking to someone on the phone who's going through something extremely difficult, and they go, hey, we're actually good. Our group's already been here. And we've got meals set up, and they're taking care of taking the kids to school. And it's just like, yes, like that. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those moments where I go, when Jesus was talking about his church, I think he was talking about this moment here, that this person is in community, and they've got 8 to 12 people that are like, we are in this with you. And they got there so much faster than I did. And I love that. I mean, I love that. I love those calls. The other call can be sad. And, this person's all by themselves, and they need or they want a pastor to do everything for them. And there's just this tension going, man, I just can't do all of that for you. And I think to myself, man, I wish they had community. Mm-hmm. They could be experiencing something right now in the midst of difficulty that is so beautiful.
Yeah.
But they passed on it, and it's sad.
Another thing we were talking about yesterday when we were having this meeting was recently I had a friend who said, hey, you need to meet this couple. They have a kid on your kid's new soccer team. And I went over to them at the next game and said hello, and they were just cool people, and it was just easy conversation. It was just fun. And we're talking, and the way my friend knows this couple is they were in this group, and they started doing these hangouts where they'd make all this food, and they love to eat, and they love to cook well. And I kept sitting there thinking, like, these people seem cool, and that food sounds awesome. And I started thinking, how can I get invited to this? How can I invite myself to this hangout? Because I want to hang out with these people and eat some of the food they're making. And I couldn't help but think of the early church, and when it comes to the community that they had, people were drawn to them maybe even before they were drawn to Jesus. And just was thinking about how amazing that would be. And I think it's happening at Rocky, but I think we want to see it happen even more. Mm-hmm. And that's what this value drives this vision, is saying, what if the people in our community saw what we had and they said, how do you get that? I want in. And we are able to kind of welcome them into what these kinds of relationships look like. And it's just a really cool thought, a really cool idea. And I think that's probably the way, or one of the reasons why God set it up like this. He wanted us to be in relationship. Like you said earlier, Mitch, we are called to relationship. And one of the reasons is because it draws people to himself. It draws people back to God. Yeah.
Creating those, like an irresistible community. That's like what you're talking about. Yeah. It's just, draws people.
Love it. Well, guys, this conversation went even better than I thought it would.
Boom.
Went as good as I thought it was going to go.
So. Oh, really? Mm-hmm. So it kind of hit your...
I thought it was going to be good. I thought it was going to be I thought it was going to be a really good one. Yeah.
What are you going to say, Matt? You just leaned in like you're going to say something good.
Well, before we end this, I will say I was just looking at all of our haircuts, and I think this is the best set of hair on a podcast you've had. I think we look good. I think today, I can tell everyone's looking pretty fresh, looking good.
Yeah.
That's the only reason we turned the cameras on today. We're like, hey, I think we're in a good moment.
Doing the podcast, I was like, man, these guys look good. You know what I mean? These are good-looking guys. So
thanks, man.
I had to acknowledge that.
Wow. Yeah. I was wearing just a T-shirt today. I was like, I need to find something to put over this, or just looks a little bit more presentable.
Yeah, you look good.
Thank you for the affirmation.
Wow. So I need a coat next time, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I know I'm just this guy.
I would say take a picture, send it to us, run it by us, and we'll let you know, Mitch.
Okay. All right.
People would look at the three of us and they would know Nick is the host of this. You know what I mean? As he should be. He looks like the host.
He looks like a host, yeah.
Yeah, he looks
I'll take it.
Yeah.
He's even,
all right, guys,
he's got
thanks
the
so
Bluetooth AirPods.
This is the first time I've tried that. It's okay. Yeah. It's okay. I'll stick with them for now.
You're sharp.
Cool. All right, guys, thanks so much.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
Later.
Take it easy.